Welcome to my sweater tour jumper edition. Hello and welcome to the Crimson Stitchery, a video channel about making all things beautiful and useful. My name is Anushka and relevant links for things mentioned in this video can be found in the description box here on YouTube. So welcome to part 2 of my sweater tour. If you missed it, I have already released part 1, which featured all of the cardigans that I've made, including this magenta number that I'm wearing in this video. That was already released, so there's a link on screen now for you to watch if you haven't done so already. But meanwhile, here is a pile of sweaters. I'm just struggling to pick it up. It's pretty heavy that I've got sitting next to me. And these are the sweaters that I have got in my wardrobe in current rotation. So same as in my cardigan tour, it's not absolutely everything that I've made, but these are the things that have lasted, and they are pretty much sweaters that I've knit over the last 10 years. So let's get straight to it. Just gonna let that collapse there. With the oldest sweater that I still have. And it's this purple lace number called It Cannot Fail to Please, which is from a vintage knitting pattern. And it's from A Stitch in Time Volume 1 by Susan Crawford and Jane Waller. I have had this jumper for such a long time. Yeah, definitely one of the oldest pieces I still have. I actually knit quite a lot of items from this book, but I don't have all of them still for various reasons. But this one I do. I love the lace pattern. I remember when I bought this book, I was really excited because the recommended yarn was actually just a commercially available, mass-produced wool and nylon superwash sock yarn. And it was Signet Truly Wool Rich 4-ply or something like that in this mauve purple kind of colour. And I literally bought the yarn for this 10 years ago, so so the price is a little bit out of date, but I remember that it was less than £20. So I think it was around £18. Obviously it's a short sleeved sweater, it's cropped, it's tight, doesn't take very much yarn at all, but it was so affordable. And I remember being really happy about this book because I loved all of the patterns, all of the vintage styles. I liked the fact that they'd been multi-sized, that they'd been updated, but I also really appreciated the fact that Susan had included a range of different yarns from a range of different price points. That meant that, lots and lots of people could afford to make really gorgeous little numbers like this jumper, and I've worn it a lot. I think one of the reasons why this one has survived is because it's not too hot. I'm not the type of person that can wear a short-sleeved wool jumper. To me, that doesn't make sense because I tend to get too hot in the body and my arms get freezing cold. But this one's okay because, yeah, it's superwash and it's lace, so it's not too hot. And I absolutely love it. I still wear it, probably not as often as I used to, but that's probably because I've got a bit more choice these days, but definitely still a big success and a firm favourite. Another vintage pattern that I've really enjoyed is Enchanting in Black and White, which I have done in pink and grey from the same book, A Stitch in Time, a 1930s pattern. And for me, this one was even cheaper to make because I only had to buy like 2 skeins of the same Signet sock yarn for the grey body. And then the mohair silk yoke was created using leftovers that I already had in my stash from other knitting projects. So this cost me less than £10 to make, which was awesome. The mohair silk is Rowan Kid Silk Haze. And I've worn this one tons. I wore this so much, especially when I was doing my undergraduate degree, when I was a student. I particularly remember it. But it's gone out of rotation recently just because under the armpits, the mohair has actually worn away and it's become very fragile there. So it's been in the mending pile for a while. I need to do some kind of duplicate stitch there, but I haven't got around to it. But it's absolutely gorgeous. I really love this top, and it's really flattering and fun. Skipping forward a few years, as I mentioned, I knit quite a few things from that book that I don't have anymore for various different reasons. And now I've got this jumper. This one is a lovely little fitted v-neck with an amazing big cable trim around the neck. And it's from a pretty old pattern as well, but old in a different way because it's from a back issue of Vogue Knitting magazine from 2006. So from ages ago. It's one of those situations where I had the pattern in my library for such a long time and always meant to knit it, and then one day I just finally got around to doing it, and I knit it out of Drops alpaca silk yarn. So again, Drops is quite a cheap brand, and the yarn for this project cost around £25 about 5 years ago. So, you know, just so that you can have a kind of rough idea. And it's a very, very fitted jumper with a lot of drape. The only thing is that the alpaca silk yarn doesn't have amazing memory, which basically means that as I wear it, it kind of stretches out through the day, and then the jumper needs to sit down, rest and relax for the fibres to kind of come back in. But it's a nice thing to wear. It's quite formal, and again, this cable neckline trim is so striking. I probably should wear it more, but yeah, probably just because it's quite formal and fitted, but it is really, really lovely piece, and I like how slinky and soft it is. The next jumper I have, also from a pattern that's a few years old, is the green garland that I knitted in 2019. As you can see, it's a very, very oversized boxy sweater with a dropped shoulder, and it's got little lace trims on the sleeve and on the body. And this is Garland by Stephanie Pohlmeier. And I made the biggest alteration that you can see is that I added loads of length to the body because the original was really cropped, and I did try making it that length, but it just looked really stupid in the end and really unflattering. So I lengthened it just so that it was big and really bulky. It looks nice with really tight leggings, and I like the rib sleeve. But overall, this pattern wasn't it needed a lot of alterations in order to actually kind of work and be flattering. And for this jumper, I used Holst Super Soft, knitted at a very, very loose gauge, but it kind of fluffed up really, really nicely when I blocked it, and it produces a really lovely airy and light fabric, so I really like that about it. And this Holst Super Soft I bought in a big batch in their Black Friday sale one year, and I basically bought 2 big batches of yarn for less than £48, including shipping, and the shipping was quite expensive. So, you know, we could say that this jumper cost £24, but I think I only used half of what I bought, so really it cost about £12. So yeah, pretty cheap, and I love the colour. The next jumper I have is yet another vintage pattern. It's a pattern from Susan Crawford's The Vintage Shetland project. I've had this on my bookshelf for quite a while. I was one of the Kickstarter, or whatever it was, crowdfunding supporters for this book, and I remember that I supported it kind of sight unseen because I'd loved all of Susan's work with the updated vintage patterns that I'd knit so many of, but I actually don't really like doing stranded colour work. So this design, Jamieson, is one of the few lace patterns from the book, and the lace patterns are really, really beautiful, but this one was definitely my favourite, and I made a lot of modifications for the tunic shape, namely that I added these bell sleeves that are gorgeous, but it's just got so many absolutely beautiful details in it that I really appreciate. There's a really special neckline detail, there's little bands of seed stitch to kind of trim the shoulders, garter stitch to trim the armholes. What else is there? I think is there a false seam? Yeah, I think that's a false seam there at the sides. All knitted in the round, I believe from the bottom up. And this is knit using really special yarn that I bought when I was on holiday in Porto, from a really gorgeous little haberdashery called Le Pot Javier, and it's 100% wool yarn, absolutely beautiful. I can't quite remember how much it cost. It didn't break the bank. I think it was probably around £40 for 100% wool, and it's got a lovely, lovely drape, and I really like this brownish burgundy colour. So yeah, another big success. This one is it's quite warm, but because of the low V-neck, sometimes it gets a bit airy around the neck and the chest, so I guess I don't wear it as much as I would like, but definitely a piece that looks good with layers. The next jumper that I have got to show is Magnolia. And when this pattern came out, it was originally in, I think, Liner magazine, and then Camilla Vard, the designer, did release it separately. Now she's got lots of different options, and it was one of those patterns that was like the it pattern, and I just got it in my head a few years ago and I was completely obsessed with it. but I definitely couldn't afford to knit with the recommended yarns or something like that. So I eventually made it in Holst Super Soft again. So it was from that kind of job block purchase that I did. So the yarn, technically for the red, I think I paid less than £24, but I definitely used half, so it's probably about £12. I've had a few comments, by the way, on my Holst Super Soft videos recently, because I did film a 3-part video series about working with that yarn. And some people commented and said it wasn't as cheap as they thought it was going to be. My response to that is, firstly, you know, everyone's definition of cheap is different, but also that I bought the yarn a few years ago, so it's quite possible that they've put their prices up since I made that purchase, which is obviously well within their right. But in my opinion, it's still a very, very affordable 100% wool yarn with a really amazing range of colours, which is why I like it. But anyway, this was in their Venetian red colour that I was also a bit obsessed with, so I bought a big cone of that. And yeah, it's okay. What I like about it is that it's really light and it's quite warm, so it makes a really good layer, especially for biking, because then I don't get too hot and too sweaty. So I like that, and it's fairly fitted. But I don't know, I just think something about it, maybe it's the colour, maybe it's the neckline, it seems like almost quite sporty, and it definitely doesn't have the same kind of romantic, decadent feel of the original that I guess is what I loved. But hey, I think that's just an interesting illustration of how your yarn choice can so affect the feel of a finished garment, you know, the sort of aesthetic feel, as you will. But yeah, I still like it, and I do wear it quite a lot, but it's just a bit more of a rough and ready everyday garment for me, which I guess is okay, because I do have other sweaters and cardigans that are a bit more decadent, like even the one that I'm wearing right now, this cardigan with the bishop sleeves. Moving on, so this is my scrap jumper. This is a scrap jumper that I really love. It was inspired by a design called Caterpillar by Kaif Facet from a really old back issue of Rowan magazine, and I used all sorts of scraps to make it, and I did make it in 2019, so regular long-term viewers of the Crimson Stitchery may recognise this item. And I think that I finished this off in the Crimson Whip Along, which was a knit along, or make along I should say, that I hosted in that period. And it was free to make because I used all sorts of scraps. So this magenta scrap is from this cardigan here that I'm wearing now. What have we got? This red one here, Venetian red, is actually from the Holst. And yeah, just all kinds of different types of wools, different weights of yarn, some held double. And then I've got this bright green cotton chenille that is a bit weird because it stands out because it's a completely different fibre and type of yarn, but it's kind of cool that like just little odd bits stand out. And it's really big, oversized, nice and casual and warm. Definitely had a lot of wear recently, just sort of a pair of leggings or loose trousers underneath. And I really enjoy it, and I just was so happy to be able to make something actually so big, comfy and cozy that was basically free out of scraps. And that's one of the things that I did talk about recently when I was reflecting on my stashless year, and I talked about how forcing myself to just work with scraps and with what I had just made me really creative and put things together in ways that I hadn't previously anticipated or expected. And this jumper is definitely definitely very pleasing result from that experience. Next up, I've got a lovely sweater. This is Amanda, which was kindly sent to me by Wool and the Gang as a kit for review because they sponsored a giveaway and they were very generous and they gave me a kit as well for myself. So thank you so much again, Wool and the Gang. And it's knit with their super bulky single ply yarn, Crazy Sexy Wool. And I really like this piece. It's so different from something that I would normally do as a knitter, even though I know that this kind of super bulky, super chunky yarn is quite popular for beginners and it's generally marketed and aimed at beginners just because you kind of get going with the project so much faster. It just works up much quicker. And actually when I learnt to knit, I did use a lot of much heavier yarns, but as I sort of progressed in my knitting abilities, I sort of realised that actually that finer yarns is actually so much cheaper to do projects with, and you know, there are other advantages and so on. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that it was just so nice to dip my toe in the water with this super bulky yarn sweater. It's just done in seed stitch, and the reason I like it is because it's so sculptural and it's so interesting, and I love sort of the idea of playing with texture and with the fabrics in that way, in the knitting. And I think that all of my projects do have a very different feel overall. You know, they use different techniques, different types of yarns, obviously different colours, and they have different shapes and silhouettes, and this one's definitely included. So I love this jumper. The only thing is that, like all single ply yarns, it hasn't worn very well. It peels really badly, so I often have to give it a haircut. But I'm still very, very fond of this jumper, and I really enjoy wearing it. It's just so soft. It's just so nice to cuddle. So yeah, I'd really love to explore some more super bulky pieces, because I just think you can create such interesting shapes from them. So I've just got two pieces left that you may recognise. Firstly is my Eclectic sweater, which is crochet. So this one technically shouldn't really be in this video, but hey ho, here she is. And I love, love, love this item. It was my first crochet garment that I had ever made. And again, it was free because it was completely made out of scraps. And again, it allowed me, you know, the opportunity to play with what I had and combine textures and colours in new ways, and to learn loads of new crochet stitches, which was super, super interesting. Again, made modifications, changed the shape of the sleeve. Seems like I just can't help myself in that arena. And it's not perfect. I think when it comes to knitting, I'm much better at understanding what's going to happen with shape, pattern, and with fabric, and I can like make changes on the fly and adapt it quite easily. But with this, my first crochet sweater, I wasn't so confident about that. Not because I couldn't do it, I definitely could have, but it was just something mental. It was a mental block that I'm really happy that I've overcome. So there are a few things in this that I wish fit a little bit better. I wish that the waistband nipped in much more, and also the neckband is a little bit tight, so I wish I'd started that a little bit lower. But by the time it was done and I tried it on, I was just so happy that I didn't want to unravel it and make the changes. So yeah, that's just, you know, a learning curve. And yeah, delighted with this item. And lastly, my Christmas jumper, Julgran by Andy Satterland. This lovely, lovely item I modified to have these 1940s square puff sleeves and a very tight sleeve. It's very, very cropped. I did add length to this. You know, I actually added 2 branches on the Christmas tree, and I made the trunk much longer, but it still is a bit too short. Nonetheless, I absolutely love it. For this yarn, I used Rowan Kid Classic, which is a wool and mohair blend. But I really like it. It's so fluffy, it's literally creamy and soft, and it is really light. And I love wearing this, it's so pretty. And Rowan Kid Classic, I got it on sale. Again, I got it in one of those Black Friday clearance events. So I think that the yarn for this sweater cost me around £25. But that was on quite a big sale. And also I bought it quite a while ago, and I tried to knit 2 jumpers and eventually unravelled them both and then made this little tiny cropped jumper. So it was kind of rescued yarn in that sense. So that's all my sweaters. If you've enjoyed this video, please do hit the like button down below and drop me a comment. Let me know which is your favourite of the sweaters that I've made and why. Are you inspired to create any of these patterns or maybe explore vintage patterns? Let me know. And this year I am hoping to do more designing. I think I've got sweaters in lots of different shapes and lots of different colours, which I absolutely love. And I think now that I've ticked all of those boxes in my personal wardrobe, I think it's really exciting to get to a point where I can just kind of have ideas and I can just express them through my knitting, rather than needing to create something in a practical sense that I actually require to use in everyday life. I feel like I've kind of got that covered, and now it's time to play and explore and experiment. If you haven't done so already, please do subscribe to the Crimson Stitchery for more videos just like this, more vlogs, tutorials, tutorials and demonstrations. I've got a lot planned for this year. I'm really excited about making more content for the Crimson Stitchery. If you'd like to support the Crimson Stitchery, you might enjoy becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. This gives you access to exclusive benefits like behind the scenes content and extra videos. I'm really grateful to all my patrons for helping to keep the Crimson Stitchery running. Thank you so much. Find my page at patreon.com/thecrimsonstitchery. Thanks so much for watching. Bye bye.